Okay, so I have a demand curve here, just a standard straight line demand curve, and I made it so that it goes from price of 10 down to a quantity of 10, so it's nice and symmetric. It doesn't have to be, but this will just make it easier to work with some of these numbers. So I'm assuming you know some of the basics of demand. That stuff is still pretty straightforward. It's the same everywhere in your textbook, other videos. So if you don't know demand curves at this point, go look that up. But we're skipping ahead to some issues with revenue and elasticity. So remember, this is price and quantity. So if I multiply price times quantity at any particular price or quantity, then I would get total revenue. So imagine this is like a seller deciding what price to set, and it's facing this particular demand curve. And when we do the theory of the firm later on, that'll be the situation that we face in terms of a seller. So, but at this point, we don't have to know anything about how this market works. We're just looking at these relationships. So if I set a price of 10, obviously my revenue would be 0. I'm going to sell 0 units. And if I want to sell that first unit, I'm going to drop the price to $9, sell 1, price times quantity is going to be 9. So this next curve just shows the relationship. You probably can't see it that well, but we just want to get this basic shape. This is total revenue over here, and this is quantity. So price of 9, quantity of 1 gives me total revenue of 9. If I want to sell that next unit, I have to drop the price to 8. But 8 times 2 is 16, so my revenue is going up by doing that. And if I keep lowering the price, I'm going to sell more quantity. And in this region of the demand curve, that effect of selling more quantity is going to outweigh the effect of dropping the price. So in other words, let's look at that a little more carefully. Here I am at $9 and my total revenue is 9. I'm going to drop the price, and now my total revenue is this area here, 16. So we have what's called a price effect and a quantity effect. The price effect is the effect on your revenue of the change in price. So that first unit I was selling at 9, in order to sell that second unit I had to drop the price to 8, so I'm losing that $1 on the one unit that I was selling before. And so the price effect is this lost revenue due to dropping the price, or if I was going the other direction, it would be the gain in revenue due to raising the price. But for now I'm dropping the price. So I've lost this revenue due to the price. I'm isolating the effect of price, and so I lost this dollar by having to drop the price to $8. But I'm gaining that extra unit, so the quantity effect is the gain in revenue from selling more units, or selling less units if I was going in the other direction. So the gain in revenue just due to the quantity change. So before I was selling 1, now I'm selling 2, and I'm selling the second unit at $8. So this area here, if I were just look at that by itself, that would be the quantity effect, the effect on my revenue of selling another unit. And since I'm selling it at $8, that $8 would be the quantity effect, the addition to my revenue from selling that extra unit. I lost $1 that I was selling my first unit at $9, and so this price effect was my loss in revenue due to the drop in price, but I gained, as you can see, more revenue because of my quantity, my extra quantity. So the quantity effect in this case is bigger than the price effect, and that's why total revenue goes up, because I have these two offsetting factors. I'm gaining because of the quantity, but I'm losing because of the price. But as long as that quantity effect is greater than the price effect, then I'm still in this area where total revenue is increasing. And that's going to be true if we calculated all these numbers. That would be true all the way up to this point, as you can see here. So all the way in this range, my quantity effect is bigger than my price effect, and so a falling price means total revenue is rising. All the way up to that point, that's where revenue is going to be the highest. And if I kept going past that point, so let's just start at $2 now, let's go all the way down here, and I'm setting a price of 2, and I'm selling 8 units. My revenue is 16, this whole area. If I were to drop the price and sell one more unit, I'm now selling 9 units, but I had to drop the price to 1 to sell that extra unit, and so now my revenue is 9, right? It was 16 before, and now it's 9, so now my total revenue has fallen, because in this range the price effect is greater than the quantity effect, because the price effect is this lost revenue. Notice I lost that dollar on all the units that I was selling, because I'm assuming we're a single price seller here. I'm picking one price and I'm selling all my units. So I lost all this revenue by dropping the price. I gained some revenue because I sold another unit. That's the quantity effect, right? So I gained this, but I lost this, and clearly the loss was bigger than the gain. That's why past this point, my total revenue is falling. So I was going from here to here, and my total revenue was falling. So the price effect was greater than the quantity effect. And that's basically what elasticity is telling you. So elasticity is just a measure of how responsive quantity is to a price change. So here, and it's in terms of percentages. So let me just skip ahead over here. This is the percent change. This is the formula for elasticity. It's percent change in quantity demanded, the change in quantity, over the percent change in price. So no, it's percentages. It's not numbers. So this is just a number without any units. So if that quantity change is higher proportionally than that price change in terms of percentages, then it's going to be elastic. So that's what we had here in this top range of our demand curve. So I dropped the price, that change in quantity percentage wise, and you can calculate the numbers if you want, but we can just see it because of what's happening to total revenue. But the change in quantity in percentage terms is greater than the change in price, which is why the total revenue is rising. Right? If I'm in this range and I continue to drop my price, now the change in quantity in percentage terms is going to be smaller relative to the price change. So that price change, going from 2 to 1 percentage wise is a very large price change. Going from 8 to 9 percentage wise is a much smaller quantity change. So that's why that ratio is going to be less than 1. That percent change in quantity was smaller than the percent change in price. So in this range of the demand curve, past that point, this whole bottom part of the demand curve, we are inelastic. And we can see that because total revenue is falling as I raise my price. So in other words, as I drop my price, in other words, if I raise my price, I'm going to be going the other direction, and now I'm gaining from that larger price effect, and I'm losing that smaller quantity effect. So my revenue would be going up if I raise my price. So we have an elastic range over here. We have an inelastic range over here, and right in the middle is what we call unit elastic. It's where that ratio would be equal to 1. So going back to the formula, if the percent change is equal, then we call it unit elastic. And so we have that point right where it changes elasticity. That is our unit elastic point. So top of the demand curve is elastic, unit elastic point, inelastic. So every straight line demand curve will have changing elasticity like this. The top of the demand curve will be elastic. Right at that midpoint is going to be unit elastic, where that total revenue hits a maximum, and then we become inelastic. So notice, because this formula is percentages, it's not slope. So this is a straight line demand curve. The slope is not changing, but elasticity is changing because of these price and quantity effects going on here. Percentage wise, we're going to get up here in the top. That's a relatively small percent price change, and over here it's a relatively large percent quantity change. And so large quantity change over small price change, that's elastic, top of the demand curve. And just the opposite over here. If I'm down towards the bottom of the demand curve, these are relatively small quantity changes percentage wise, and these are relatively large price changes. So the price effect is larger than the quantity effect. If I drop my price, total revenue is falling. Right? So these relationships are very important to keep in mind, and you should sort of think of this picture as to why this makes sense, right? So if the price falls, total revenue is rising, it's elastic. Price rises, total revenue rises. So I just did it the other way. So I was going here, price rises, total revenue rises. That means it's inelastic. So if the price fell and total revenue fell, then it would be inelastic also. And I'm going to come back to this case of unit elastic, but just looking at the ratio, if these percentages had just happened to be the same, ratio is 1, it's unit elastic.